What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports Cash Game Show. It's Week 18, the final week, and typically there's like a lot of competitive games, but there's only really one. It's the Lions and Vikings, so it's definitely a weird Week 18. We'll obviously break it down and discuss it. Bryce, I'll go over to you and talk about it for me. So talk about the season, I guess, how you did last week and what you're doing with this week.
Yeah, big shout out to JVC for winning that Millie. Always fun to get one of those in. I had a suboptimal week in cash. I went pretty hard at that Green Bay Vikings game, and it was just total shit. You see a lot of these important games like being flexed to like Saturday, or like FanDuel at least includes the Sunday night game. So you got the Lions game on Sunday night, which is for all the marbles. So yeah, I mean, it's as far as Week 18 slates go, I normally like Week 18, and this year I absolutely hate it, and we'll be playing less volume for those of you out there. But you gotta put up the content, and we're still locked in. Obviously, it's just I don't think this is like a week to go big or anything.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree, right? Like, I'm not shoving the chips on this week or anything like that. I don't think it's worth it. We have some big playoff weeks coming up, obviously, so that's cool. And there's also a Saturday slate if you want to play that. It's only 2 games, but there's that as well. So there's tons of action if you want it. There's big prize pools and tournaments, but we'll obviously break down how to handle the cash game streets this week. We'll obviously kick it off talking about the quarterback position, and a lot of bad quarterbacks are going to be playing this week. A lot of them. It's definitely going to be a tough thing to figure out. We'll have some 4K quarterbacks, we'll have some spend-up quarterbacks, and you're going to have value all over the place. And so it doesn't really matter what you do, I think, with your quarterback. If you want, you can go Josh Dobbs. That is one guy I know that is getting pushed a little bit at the 4K price. I think Baker Mayfield is the best spend, right? If there are guys that are playing in must-win games, Baker Mayfield is one of them, right? There are some like quote-unquote must-win games. Like the Dolphins are in a, must-win game. But, again, there's not a lot of important ones. Baker seems like the best spend of the slate. You can make a case for Michael Penix going against Carolina because that's another must-win for those guys. Joe Flacco, I mean, not saying he's in a must-win, but it's one of the worst pass defenses, so that's a pretty good spot for him at 5.4. But, of course, we got the Josh Dobbs at 4K that you can kind of invest in. And I don't know. I would like to get the Baker if I can, if we have enough value to. What's your thoughts on the quarterback position, Bryce?
To me, it seems like Dobbs. I think you pick positions to spend and positions to save. I think it's safe here. If I was spending, it would be Baker. I think it's a pretty binary decision between those two. And then, on FanDuel, I would play Darnold or Goff. That game is pretty much the nuts. Cash on FanDuel is pretty much going to be a game stack of that, like with all the expensive guys, and then you choose like your cheap guys from like these crappy games.
Yeah, 1,000%. That is how you play FanDuel this week. It's just stack that game up and find the values that you can mix and match. You're going to want to get the good plays in there. It's just plain and simple. And I'm with you. Dobbs is obviously good. It just depends where you want to save, right? Like if you save at running back a bunch, then I have the money for Baker Mayfield. Maybe I don't because I want to spend up for some guys. But if you do want to spend up, Atlanta is in one of those must-win games, right? And at the running back position, Bijan Robinson seems like a clear-cut favorite, right? If this was a game that every team was playing a real game, Bijan would still be one of the best plays on the board at 8,500, right? So Bijan at 8,500, he is one of the best running back options. Bucky Irving, 7.7, he's another good running back option you can get to. Yes, he is priced up, but still a good play in a must-win style game. Trying to see if there's anything else like that you'd love. Like, I guess you could make the case for Guerrero a little bit. You'll have some values, like maybe a Michael Carter will be an interesting value with the James Conner injury. But again, not some must-win game. Also, the Rams, they're sitting a bunch of their guys. Blake Corum will finally get that workload a ton. So there are guys you can get to, but clearly at the top, it's Bijan and Bucky, and then trying to figure out what other guys you want to mix and match. Bryce, is that kind of how you're seeing it at running back?
Yeah, Bijan and Bucky are still locks to me this week. It's one of the reasons I wanted to save a quarterback. And then I think you should be playing 3 running backs, and your third should be a save. It's kind of hard to figure out what the best saves are right now because we don't know, like, say Saquon's like totally out for the game, like I could see Will Shipley being the best running back play, like him ahead of Carter. I think that's like those guys in quorum would be the best ones. I see Steele popping up places in projections. I would take Carter and Shipley over him. So yeah, I mean Bucky's an absolute beast. I mean we saw it last week. Guy's just a really good football player. Good matchup, must-win game for them. Same with Atlanta and Bijan, nut matchup too. I don't really see how you avoid those guys.
Yeah, another thing that could be worth watching on Sunday is like some teams might only carry 2 running backs, right? They might just realize like, oh, like we're not going to have 3 active, and if that's the case, a two backfield committee for a cheap guy is way better than the 3. Depending on the scenarios. That is something kind of to watch out for.
Yeah, it's like preseason type of stuff where it's like you look to see how many guys they have active because, like, if there's only 2, I mean, at worst, you're probably going to get a 50-50 split. But, like, if they have 3, it could be like, 60, 20, 20. It just leaves the door open for more scenarios that you normally wouldn't want. It almost turns into like a preseason or like an NBA thing where there's like, 9 guys available as opposed to 11. Like, if there's only 9 guys, these guys have to play minutes. It's the same thing here.
Yep, exactly. Let's get to the receiver position. Again, we want to spend up for our running backs, and we'll find some values and mix and match. But receiver, if we like Josh Dobbs, we should like Juwan Jennings a little bit at 5'8". Again, still in that Brandon Ayuk role. I assume he is going to be a good and popular play. If you have the money for Mike Evans, he sounds great, right? If you look at the props, his props are very adjusted for that the bonus they're trying to get, not the bonus, the like 1,000-yard receiving season. They want to keep the streak alive. Of course, they want to win the game, but they do want to get the streak. And Baker has talked a lot about trying to get Mike Evans his receiving yards. And, if he gets him the streak, which is, I think, 95 yards he needs or somewhere around there, that's almost the bonus, right? So clearly a good spot for 8K Mike Evans if you want to spend on him. Malik Neighbors, 7-1. Listen, the Giants won a meaningless game last week. I'm sure they're going to fight in another meaningless game. At 7-1, it's definitely not a bad spot for Malik Neighbors. Cortland Sutton's another guy that needs, I think, for some incentive, he needs like 80-ish receiving yards. Obviously, they're in a must-win game.
Denver also cares, which is big. Denver is one of the few teams that is in a must-win game. They're massive favorites against KC, so that game script would be the only issue there. But they're still going to use their best players. It's kind of why I recommended paid down for quarterback on DraftKings is to get guys like Mike Evans who seem a little bit overpriced. But I would rather have a 4K QB in Mike Evans than say Baker Mayfield and a cheap receiver, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Other guys to call out, like Drake London's in a must-win game, right? He's not the worst play at 6'5". You got these Colts options just against a bad pass defense. And then another thing to think about too, with the Malik Neighbors stuff, is think about receivers who are playing in the past couple weeks and the games haven't mattered. Brian Thomas Jr. at 7'3", definitely not someone you can ignore, right? He's been playing. I'm assuming he's going to keep crushing. These Colts receivers, I assume they're just going to keep going out there and playing in the matchup. So there's definitely a lot of options you can get to. It's just about trying to figure out which ones are the best and figure out the structure of the slate, right? The pay down a quarterback or spend up. That's going to kind of guide the direction that you go. And another team that hasn't been really playing for anything all season long, the Raiders, right? And Brock Bowers at 6'6", if we have the salary relief, he's definitely in the conversation here in the matchup against the Chargers. Trey McBride as well. They were battling last week, even though it did not matter. 6'5", he's definitely a spend you can get to. If you want to save at this position, though, I think someone like Strange, not the worst option. You could go to a Kyle Pitts at 4K. I don't want to, but it is a quote-unquote must-win game for those guys. And then, of course, we are waiting on the Cade Otton news. He might not play this week, and that would obviously open up for 3,200 Payne Durham to be a pretty intriguing play. Bryce, how are you attacking the tight end position?
Yeah, I've liked Payne Durham for weeks, and I'll continue to like him as long as Otton's out. I think it's a little tough to kind of nail down these cheap specific plays yet. Week 18 is just a massive mess. We'll know a lot more come Sunday morning. So make sure to get over to the site and we'll have all these cheap guys up. I think if you're spending, it's Bowers for sure. I just trust him more than McBride, I guess. I think I kind of think both teams want to win, but like I trust Antonio Pierce to go out and try to win a game more. Like that guy never takes his foot off the gas.
Yeah.
In terms of like playing his guys, he's like just such an intense person. But like cheap tight ends, these KC players are absolutely like min priced. I think they have a 3K receiver out there. Peyton Hendershot is stone min. I'm not expecting any of the KC regulars to play. Basically already said they came out and said they wouldn't. So he would be like my preferred punt option. And then, yeah, I mean, tight end, I don't think there's a lot in the mid range unless you want to play like a Jake Ferguson, who I don't really trust here. Like Chigakonkwo, don't really trust him as well. Same with Hunter Henry. Like, you've seen Hooper take a decent amount from Henry the last couple of weeks. So yeah, I think it's tight end. A lot of these week 18 decisions become pretty binary, where it's just like you're jamming in stars and scrubs. So it's like, do you want to punt tight end or do you want to spend? Like I would probably either full punt or full spend here.
Yeah, that definitely seems like the route to go this week is either punt or spend, right? And just depends on roster construction for sure. You can even make a case maybe like in the mid tier if you land on it, like a Hunter Henry 4-3, right? I mean, that wouldn't be the craziest thing, but Hunter Henry weeks are never fun, so I'm not trying to do that. We'll get the defense. We'll talk about that. Defense, again, it could depend on your construction a little bit. Obviously, Joe Flacco can't move, so if you want to get cheap, $2,500 Jaguars defense. Also, this is not a bad week to get cheaper with your defense and just look for backup quarterbacks to kind of attack, like the Seahawks. They make a ton of sense against this Rams team that's basically sitting all their guys. The Broncos D at 3K, I mean, they're pretty good against Carson Wentz, right? I mean, you can't argue with that. They're at home as well. They're a strong defense. So at 3K, they're another team I would look at. The Eagles against the Giants. You can always make a case, just attack the Giants. But another thing to call out, too, is check on Sunday for inactives on the defensive side, right? Like there could be a ton that pop out and make us not like some of these options that we are looking at. So, Bryce, talk about the defense position.
Defense that kind of stands out to me is the Broncos. I do think they like Carson Wentz is playing for like a backup contract. He's like one of the better backup QBs in the NFL. But like, I think they'll let him throw more than like a lot of these other teams will with just putting some total dust balls out there. And, Denver needs to win. So there's not going to be any surprise inactives on the defensive side of the ball there. So I would lean, like if I was playing the defense right now, it'd be Denver. But, come Sunday, I think there's going to be like 2 or 3 other ones that stand out as well. But that's like kind of the one that I would lock in on here.
Yeah, they seem like the best defense if you had to pick. I mean, I don't hate Packers against the Bears, but they also might just not care that much like as the game goes on. And Caleb could obviously get it done. But Broncos seems like the best one on the board if you had to pick. But there's other options. And obviously it depends on your salary relief and everything. And like Bucks are not bad too against the Saints. So we'll have to see when I start constructing my lineups and I get enough information on the slate. Of course, that's the reason me in the Discord chat will obviously put that content up. Bryce will make sure to have on the playbook the cash game plays, the core plays as well. Bryce, what's your final thoughts here on week 18?
I kind of hate how the NFL's moved to like just going to like all the premier games on the island games. I mean, it makes sense for them, but it kind of sucks for fantasy. It's a week to get. I think it's a great week to play tournaments. I'm personally going to be lowering my cash game exposure, as I said earlier. Week 17 used to be like one of my favorite weeks back when we only had 17 weeks instead of 18, but like because there were a lot more games that mattered too. So there was like a couple cheap values, but like a lot of like good expensive guys to choose from this week. There's not many good expensive guys to choose from. It's pretty much, Bijan, Bucky, and Mike Evans are like the 3 expensive guys that you'll see just kind of spammed everywhere. And, I think for good reason. So I like these slates a lot more in years past than I do this year. So, don't be afraid to get different in tournaments. You can see some of these guys, like what was the Matt Flynn game where he put up like 50 points and then, he got like a $20 million backup quarterback deal and was just absolutely atrocious. Like these guys will come out and try and play. Like if you're on the field, a lot of these backups don't get a chance to put out any tape all year. And, week 18 is their one chance to put it up. So like they're going to come out and play hard for the guys that are on the field, especially backups. But yeah, not a great slate for cash in my opinion.
For sure. Agree with you on that. And as Boynton says, this is the show for the true grinders. Yes, week 18.
Yeah. The true sickos is probably a better way to phrase it, but I agree.
All right. Well, that will wrap it up for us on the Cash Show. Thanks a lot for joining. Get the Discord to be able to get all the final stuff and get a Run Pure Sports sub. Using the code RPS15, get you 15% off. And hit the like on the way out for us. Thanks a lot for joining, though. For me, Mango, and Bryce. See you guys later.